All right, welcome back to ABA exam review and our latest set of RBT exam practice questions where we're going through this set together and breaking them down. If you're new to the channel, welcome. If you're returning, welcome back. Please like and subscribe. Check out btexamreview.com for all of our study materials, including our combo pack. As always, when you pass, let us know so we can include you in the Sunday shout out. Work hard, study hard. Let's get going. Brian holds up a flashcard and Justin responds 4. Brian gives Justin a Skittle. Brian holds up another flashcard and Justin responds 6. Brian says, nope, let's try again. This occurs 8 more times. What type of teaching does this most resemble? If you get a question that is asking about the type of teaching you're doing, consider our 2 primary forms. We have discrete trial teaching, and then we have naturalistic or incidental teaching. And with discrete trial teaching, everything's very contrived, it's very planned, it's very controlled. Naturalistic teaching or incidental teaching, we are just taking the opportunities to teach as they come to us, much less controlled, much less contrived. So when we have a situation where Brian is using flashcards with Justin, and there's a clear SD, a clear response, and a clear consequence, pause, and a restart, it's very clearly very controlled because we have a response followed by a consequence. Brian continues the process, response followed by a consequence, and they do it 8 more times. So it's the same ABC over and over and over again. So what type of teaching does that resemble? Well, A, discrete trial teaching. You can see the discrete trials in this situation. Hold up a flashcard, Justin responds, consequence. Hold up a flashcard, Justin responds, consequence. These are our discrete trials. Looking at B and C, naturalistic and incidental teaching, same thing. We would be naturally teaching. This would be like if Brian was with Justin in Justin's bedroom, and as Justin is playing with his toys, Brian starts asking him questions about the toys and starts teaching him about things using naturally occurring situations, not what's happening here. So we're not using naturalistic or incidental teaching, and we're not shaping because there are no approximations here. We're not going through the approximations and reinforcing successive approximations. What Brian is doing is using discrete trials to teach Justin some sort of math or some sort of numbers. So what type of teaching does this resemble? A, discrete trial teaching. A behavior technician is scheduled to work with the client from 4 to 7 p.m. on Tuesdays and Thursdays. The technician is always on time and never misses session. However, the client's parents routinely call the technician on the weekends and outside of normal work hours. What should the technician do? Now, not uncommon, right? You've got a technician who's working late nights, 4 to 7, Tuesdays and Thursdays. Okay, sometimes sessions after school, they run long. However, you're under no obligation to be working when you're not on the clock, when you're not scheduled. Because as a technician, your job primarily is implementation and data collection. Your supervisor should be handling everything else, especially off the clock. And so if we have a situation where the client's parents are calling you on weekends and outside of normal work hours, that's going to be an issue. Now, you are fully allowed to answer and respond appropriately, right? Only things that you can answer. But for the most part, this is not where you should be communicating with parents. You should be communicating on session as authorized by your supervisor. So in this case, what should the technician do about these calls outside of work hours and on weekends? A, answer each call and provide guidance to the parent. It's not your job. That's the supervisor's job to provide this guidance and this parent training outside of these sessions. It is not the technician's job. B, ignore the calls until they stop. Well, you can't just ignore them. We still want to maintain that good relationship with the parents. So we don't just want to ghost them and ignore them altogether. We want to take action. C, inform their supervisor of the ongoing calls that are occurring. When in doubt, communicate with your supervisor. So in this case, the technician should tell their supervisor, hey, by the way, client's parents keeps calling me on weekends outside of normal work hours. They're asking me questions. I don't know what to do about it. And then it's on your supervisor to handle that situation. When in doubt, communicate with your supervisor. And then D, ask the parents to stop calling them outside of work hours. Again, put that on your supervisor, right? Always push all these things to your supervisor. The ethics code and the task list both emphasize the importance of open, clear, prompt communication with the supervisor. So in this case, the technician should immediately inform the supervisor of the ongoing calls that are occurring. You are a behavior technician working in a clinical setting. Your supervising analyst instructs you to provide your client with a sticker every 5 minutes, regardless of what your client is doing at that time. You ask if you should, even if the client is not engaged in work, and the supervisor tells you that you should. What are you implementing? Think about this, okay? There's a key here, right? So what are we doing? What are we trying to accomplish? Well, you are providing your client with a sticker every 5 minutes, regardless, and that's the key, regardless of what your client is doing at that time. Remember, typically, you're giving a consequence contingent something else, those if-then statements, right? If you're doing this, then this happens. If you're providing this sticker no matter what, and there's no contingency, but it is systematically planned on a timer, that's something totally different. So you say, should I give it to the client even if they're not engaged in work? The supervisor says you should, meaning no matter what, you're giving the sticker. What are you likely implementing? A, non-contingent reinforcement. Well, non-contingent reinforcement is obviously the opposite of contingent. And with non-contingent reinforcement, we are delivering reinforcement on a schedule regardless of what's occurring. That's what we're doing here. Every 5 minutes, here's a sticker. We typically use non-contingent reinforcement as a motivating operation. We're not sure why we're using it here. All we know is we're describing non-contingent reinforcement. Contingent reinforcement, again, is if you're working, then you get a sticker. That's contingent, if then. If, in this case, we just have you get a sticker no matter what, that's non-contingent. Understand that difference. It's not extinction because we're not withholding reinforcement for a previously reinforced behavior. And it's not a bribe. A bribe is when you say, I'm going to give you this. Now you have to engage in the behavior. We're not putting any demand on them. We're not requiring anything of them. We're just saying every 5 minutes, no matter what they're doing, they're getting reinforcement. That sticker is not contingent on anything except for that 5-minute clock. So what are you implementing? A non-contingent reinforcement. Marco is sitting in his chair in the classroom, staring out the window, but minding his own business. His teacher says, Marco, you never pay attention. You cannot succeed that way. Marco now engages in disruptive behavior during class. Teacher's feedback acted as what relative to Marco staring out the window and minding his own business? Not unusual, right? If you're going to change a behavior, there's another behavior that's going to take its place. It's up to you to determine, is that going to be a positive or negative behavior, right? So to speak. Now, in this case, we're looking at the teacher's feedback. That's a behavior question. So think about the teacher's feedback relative to Marco staring out the window and minding his own business. So let's find that. Marco's in his chair. Here we go, staring out the window, minding his business, right? The consequence is the teacher says, Marco, you never pay attention. You cannot succeed that way. That's the feedback. That's the consequence. So we know it's positive. And how do we know it's positive? It's been added, right? She's added this feedback. So at least we know it's positive. Now, in order to determine if it's reinforcing or punishing, we have to figure out how did Marco's behavior change? Well, now Marco engages in disruptive behavior during class. And so normally we would say, well, we're not sure, did Marco stop staring out the window and minding his own business? Because it's not specific to that, right? But it does say now he engages in disruptive behavior during class. So instead of minding his own business, what is he doing? He's disrupting behavior. So Marco's behavior of minding his own business has decreased because our options only give us consequences. So we have to pick a consequence. And what's changed is he's not minding his own business. He's now disrupting the class. So he's, as a result of the feedback, minding his own business has decreased. So when something decreases, it's punishing. And since we added the feedback, it's positive. Put them together, we're going to get positive punishment. Remember, you've got to pick the best answer. And this one is a little harder because it's not that specific. You have to ask yourself, what happened as a result of the consequence? Well, Marco engages in disruptive behavior. He didn't do it before, so what changed? Well, he stopped minding his own business. his minding his own business decreased. It was punished due to the positive, or the feedback that was added, which is positive. Again, put them together, we get B, positive punishment. Jennifer is sitting on the ground with her son Ben and holds up a yellow card. Ben just stares at Jennifer. Jennifer holds up the card again and says yellow. Ben then says yellow. What type of prompt did Jennifer deliver? So we're looking at Jennifer and her prompt. At first, Jennifer is sitting on the ground with her son Ben, holds up the yellow card. Ben just stares, doesn't say anything. Then Jennifer holds up the card again. There's a SD. Says yellow. That's the prompt. Ben says yellow. So the prompt is yellow. What type of prompt is that? A response prompt. Now, what's the difference between a response prompt and a stimulus prompt? A stimulus prompt, you are changing the actual stimulus. Did Jennifer change the card in any way? She didn't. So a response prompt acts on the actual response, which is yellow. Jennifer's prompt acted on the response of yellow. She didn't change the stimulus, right? She acted on the response. So it is A, a response prompt, but it's also C, a verbal prompt. A good lesson, and you never just pick the first answer you like. You read all your answer choices, because Jennifer's prompt is a response prompt that acted on the response of yellow, right? And it was also a verbal prompt because it's easy to spot. She verbally prompted Ben to say yellow. So what type of prompt did Jennifer deliver? Well, D, both A and C. Prompts are either response prompts and then stimulus prompts, and then we have different types, right? So physical prompts are response prompts, modeling prompts are response prompts, so on and so forth. Ask yourself, did the prompt actually change the stimulus, or did it just act on the response? Craving water after a long workout, not drinking for 3 days after a night out with friends, and a learner ignoring a reinforcer they once preferred are all examples of what? Interesting question, right? So these are all examples of what? Well, let's look at our first one. Craving water after a long workout. To me, it seems like you're deprived of water and now you crave it. Deprivation has to do with motivating operations. Okay, so not drinking for 3 days after a night out with friends. So you go out and then you don't drink for 3 days. You've been satiated on going out and drinking, right? And then a learner ignoring a reinforcer they once preferred. So they've got too much of the reinforcer. Now they've ignored it. Seems to me they've also been satiated. So the first one, craving water after a long workout, you were deprived. So A, deprivation. However, we also have not drinking for 3 days after a night out with friends. You were satiated. And the learner ignoring a reinforcer they once preferred, also satiated. So we look like both A and B look good. So if we see D, both A and B. Again, what is deprivation? Deprivation is you haven't had enough of something, so you want it more. The motivation is higher. Satiation is you've had too much of something. Motivation is lower. Craving water, you're deprived. Not doing something, you're satiated. Not wanting the reinforcer, you're satiated. All these things are both an example of deprivation and satiation, making our answer D, both A and B. Although behavior and response are often used interchangeably, there is a distinct difference between the two. How would you describe that difference? Kind of a terminology question. It's a good teaching question. How would you describe the difference between behavior and response? Because remember, we target behaviors for change, right? And so if I said nail biting is a behavior. If I said each time you bite your nails, those are responses. So responses are individual occurrences or instances of the larger behavior. So that's what we're looking for here. A response is the action, and a behavior is a single instance of that action. That's the reverse, right? Behavior is the action, response is a single instance. B, a behavior is what the learner does, and response is a single instance of that behavior. Pretty good, right? Behavior is what the learner does. That's what we target. The response is a single instance of behavior. B looks pretty good. Read all your answers. C, a behavior and a response are not different in any way. Just untrue. D, a behavior represents problematic behaviors while a response represents skills for increase. Again, not true. A behavior is what a learner does or what we target. A response is a single occurrence or instance of that behavior. Excellent. Thank you for watching. Check out btexamreview.com for all of our study materials. Please subscribe if you have not already. Let us know when you pass so we can include you in the Sunday shout out. Work hard, study hard. See you soon.